Hello, I'm Dave Williamson, and thank you for watching this video that's all about getting the rust out of your golf game. If you're like me, the winter was entirely too long. Certainly super excited to get the season going. But there's a few things that I look at in my golf swing every spring to really kind of get tuned up for the year. So I want to share 5 key things that I look at in my golf swing that I think might help you as well as we get ready to get back into golf. Okay, the first swing key I want to look at is really the most important part of your golf swing, and that's your grip. And I want you to look at the grip as really kind of like when you're getting your bikes tuned up after having them in the shed all winter. You know, you check your tire pressure and you want to make sure that you have the right tread. So running with that analogy, I got 2 things that I want to share with regards to the golf grip. And number 1 is your golf grip pressure. We've waited all winter to come out and hit golf balls. The first thing that we want to do, of course, is get up over the ball, and we're getting ready to smash it, right? Like, we really want to see how much extra distance we've picked up, especially with all that off-season training, and you death grip the club. And I think a lot of people that I met last year were really surprised to hear that the best grip pressure on a scale of 1 to 10 is actually around a 2 out of 10. You want to hold on to the golf club as if it was a tube of toothpaste with the top turned off. Right? So you want to be able to imagine that you're swinging that tube and you're not getting any toothpaste to come out, okay? So the same thing applies to the golf grip. When you grip it for this year, I really want you to focus on that golf grip pressure. Make sure that you're holding it nice and light, almost so that somebody could almost take the club out of your hand if they pulled it. Trust me, when you're swinging, the golf club will not go flying out. You'll hold on to it naturally. The next thing I want to look at in the golf grip is actually how you're holding on to it. And I know there's a few different ways that you can hold it, whether that's interlocking, overlapping, or even baseball. And I used to use a baseball grip for quite a long time. It's indifferent how you hold it, except for a couple key things. Number 1, make sure that you're holding the golf club in most of your fingers, right? You don't want to have it back in the palm. You want to have it in your fingers. But here's my little tip, and I call it the flying V's. So if there's anybody out there that's a guitar enthusiast, you'll know all about the flying V guitar. And I want you to think about the flying V's in your golf grip. When you hold the golf club, you'll notice that your thumb and your pointer finger, they make this little V in both of your hands, right? So if I'm wearing a golf glove on my left hand, you would notice it as well. What I want you to do is certainly be cognizant of that grip pressure, but the next thing is I want you to see both of those V's between your thumb and your pointer finger pointed over your right shoulder. It's a little different than a lot of people out there that have it one over your right V over your right shoulder and left V over the left shoulder. But coming out of the wintertime, it's really important to make sure that your hands are rotating properly. So you can adjust this, of course, as you start to play a little bit more over the course of the summer, but I want you to have both of those V's with your left hand and with your right hand. I want to see that V pointed over your right shoulder. And that's what I'm doing in my golf swing every year when I come out of winter. 2 things with the grip, the flying V's and your grip pressure. I think it's going to be a great thing to look at as you start your season. Okay, here's the first simple trick that I look at every spring to make sure that my posture is correct. In my hands, I've got an 8 iron. This works well with a 7 iron as well. I want you to stand straight upright, and I want you to take your 8 iron or your 7 iron. I want you to point it parallel to the ground, right out in front of you. And I think what a lot of people do in the spring is they really round over their shoulders to get up over the ball. Maybe their hamstrings are tight or your back is tight, what have you. That's certainly the case for myself. But what I like to try to do, of course, is take that 8 iron or the 7 iron, put it straight out in front of you, and then I want you to picture your hips going straight back. Okay, so now that you've got the club out in front of you and you've gripped it properly, think of your hips as really going straight back. Okay? Now I know it's going to feel awkward and almost like you're toppling over the ball. That's really where it's important to make sure you've got a nice flex in your knees so that you're able to have a little bit more weight on your heels. And of course, you really feel like your butt is being stuck out, okay? So you'll feel a little bit tight in your back and your hamstrings. But of course, this is something over the spring and of course over the summer that it's really going to start to loosen up a little bit more for you. So take your 8 iron, your 7 iron, put it parallel to the ground, point your butt straight back, make sure you've got a nice flex in your knees, okay? And that you're addressed properly. The second tip that I have with your posture is a way to be able to envision a correct posture out on the golf course. So you don't have to take your club before each swing, check it, stick your butt back, flex your knees, etc. It's an old tip that I picked up years ago, and it's picturing that you have a bar stool underneath of your butt as you're getting ready to swing the golf club. And again, I know this feels incredibly awkward when you're not used to it, but over the summer, you start to get a little bit more flexible in your hamstrings and your back, and it gets to be a little bit more comfortable. But what this does, of course, is it allows you to now be able to properly take the club back and set yourself up in the right positions in order to hit the ball properly. So think about having a bar stool underneath of you as you start to hit a few more golf balls this spring. I think that'll really start to help your posture as well. Okay, the third thing that I like to look at every spring as I come out of a winter's hibernation is the takeaway, or how do we set our golf swing up for success as we move into playing a little bit more golf. So, so far we've just to review, we've looked at the golf grip and how we set up to it through our golf posture. But I think this next piece is just as important. It's the takeaway, and it's how do we move the club off the golf ball. For me, every spring, I get so excited to hit it, I throw my hands out in front, and the club is new to me. It kind of feels foreign and it feels heavy. And you'll notice that when my club comes back, my hands kick out, right? And you see this increase in distance between my hands and my right leg. And what happens from there, of course, is you pick the club up, centrifugal force takes over, and you start to cut down on top of it, right? And I'm guilty of that as well. So here's the first thing I look at in the club takeaway, is being able to move the club back so that your left hand is the same distance from your right leg as where you started, okay? So again, I work on this on the range every spring, is just the proper takeaway to make sure that the club is starting to rotate open and it's starting to move back, but my hands aren't flaring out too far from my body, okay? So keep it the same distance on the way back from your right leg as where you started. And here's a real quick tip to be able to do that, or help to envision to being able to do that, is think that your arms are forming a giant triangle, especially with the golf club, okay? So your arms are forming this triangle. Move that back in one piece, or start to move away. Think of your shoulders as starting to move the club head further away from the golf ball, but all together in one piece, right? You're not lifting the club head straight away, or certainly having the club hold off behind you. Everything is moving together as one piece, and again, keeping that same distance from your right leg as you start to move the club head back. So one giant piece with the left arm, the right arm and the golf club, and move back the exact same distance from your right leg. That's going to set up the rest of your golf swing for success. Something that I look at every spring. I hope that helps you in your golf game as well. Okay, the fourth key element that I'm looking at to really help get the rust out of my golf swing is having the club properly set on my backswing. So we've got a nice job looking at our grip, our posture, and certainly our takeaway. This next one is incredibly important. Once we have the takeaway, it's now looking at making sure that the club is set properly in order to load the backswing for the most power that we can get out of it. So there's really two things that I look at in the club set position every spring, of course, that I'm really rusty at, and I think it might help you as well. The first one is, once you've done your takeaway and you've gotten the club back, I usually stop with the club parallel to the ground. And at this position, I really want to make sure that my club is rotating properly. For me, that position when that club is parallel to the ground is that the club face, in this case an 8-iron, is pointing straight up to the sky, okay? I should be able to now rotate my body 90 degrees, put the club back down, and be completely perpendicular to my initial target. So again, we'll get over the ball, we'll move our club back, and when the club is parallel to the ground, again, see that club face? It should be pointed straight up to the sky. For me, I tend not to rotate my club very much on the way back in the spring. So here gives me a nice chance to be able to check to make sure that my club is opening up and that my alignment is proper to the target. So again, you should be able to move 90 degrees sideways to be able to bring the club back down perpendicular. But you'll also notice at this position that when my club is pointing straight up to the sky, that my club path should be pointed straight down towards my target as well, okay? I get really sloppy in this in the spring, especially with all the new movement after taking the winter off. So again, make sure that that club, when it's parallel to the ground, club face is pointing straight up to the sky, and the club shaft is pointing straight down to your target. here's a little hack that I have in my golf swing that I look at to really kind of help make sure that my club is set properly on my backswing. So the wrists have to hinge in your golf swing on the way back, and that's a great way in order to generate a lot of power in your golf swing. What a lot of people do is they don't hinge their wrists properly, and I'm in the same boat as well on my backswing. So there's a way to be able to check that. Have the club pointed straight out like we did in our posture video, making sure that the club is parallel to the ground. But in this case, instead of bringing it down to check for our posture, what I want you to do is take the club and I want you to try to point it straight up to the sky, right? My wrists are really inflexible after taking the winter off. And you notice that over the summer, I'll be able to get a little bit more wrist hinge. But for right now, have that club parallel to the ground, point it straight up to the sky, and then move it back into position, okay? That's the way that your wrists should be moving on your backswing. It's not any of these awkward ways that you see a lot of people, and myself included, come over the winter with. It's being able to have that club parallel, bend your wrist straight up, and then move it back to that position that we had when the club was parallel to the ground, okay? So again, in this position, you're really starting to now point your wrists straight up. You really need to have a wrist hinge in your golf swing in order to generate the maximum amount of power. And certainly I want to come out of the spring season with a lot of power in my golf game. So being able to have those wrists hinge properly, combine the two elements together. So club parallel to the ground, then hinge those wrists straight up. And again, a great little hack for that is have it right out in front of you, bend the wrists, put them back into position. And you'll notice that my club is hopefully on the correct plane for my body to really generate a lot of power in my golf swing. Okay, the last thing I want to look at in my golf swing, especially after coming out of a really lazy winter time, is the way that my club rotates through the ball. So a really quick recap, we looked at the grip and the grip pressure. We've looked at our posture to make sure that we're set up for success. We looked at the takeaway of the golf club and making sure that everything is moving properly to set up the swing. We've looked at our club set position and making sure that we're generating as much power as we can. But here's the last thing I wanted to show you, and it's the way that you're able to now roll your hands through the ball, again, generating the most amount of power that you can in your golf swing. I've got a little hack for that, and you'll see that I'm wearing my watch today. I try to practice every spring with a watch on because it reminds me of how my wrists should roll through impact. What I tend to do, and I think a lot of people are similar, is they get to their backswing and they come down and they leave the club face open. Leaving that club face open generates the ball to spin to the right. So what I try to do is wear my watch, and I really want to focus on a couple key parts, okay? Right now, you'll notice that my watch is pointed towards the target at address. When I move the club back, that watch is now pointed perpendicular to my target. Again, at that key point we looked at in the club set video. So at this key moment, you'll see the watch face is pointing at the camera. When I come back down from the top of my backswing, at the top of my backswing, come back down, you'll notice that my watch is starting to rotate, okay? So again, back at the club position, or ball position, you'll notice that my watch face is pointing towards the target. Here's the key one. When I roll through the ball, I want that watch face to be pointed behind me, okay? What I tend to do is come through the ball and have it left open, swing up, and it's too late, right? A lot of spin to the right. So again, what I'm trying to do, especially in the spring to get the rust out of my golf swing, is on my takeaway, make sure the watch face is pointed out. On the way through, make sure that the watch face is pointed behind me. I think you'll really feel your wrists rotate through the club, or through the ball, sorry. I certainly do every spring, and I think that's really gonna help you. The last thing I do too is, look, we've come out of winter, it's been incredibly wet and cold, and a lot of the golf courses, unlike here in Florida, are really, really wet. So we're getting ready, we do everything properly, and in the summertime, you can really hit down hard on the back of the ball and generate a lot of spin. You can't do that in the spring, especially in Atlantic Canada. So look, while we're looking through grip pressure, key positions in the golf swing, don't be afraid in the spring to grip up on your golf club. I do that a lot as well, especially with my wedges, knowing that the golf course is really, really wet. And it's okay too to swing at 3/4, right? Coming out of the spring or coming out of the winter time, you won't be hitting it the same distance that you will in the summertime anyway, just because of the layers. Your body's getting warmed up to playing golf again. So don't be afraid to grip up on the golf club and think about swinging at a 3/4 swing so that you're really trying to pick the golf ball off the ground. As the course has become a little drier, certainly feel free to hit down on top of it and generate a little bit more power. But for today, grip up on the golf club, little 3/4 swing, and again, remember that watch rotating through the ball.